They sold you a story that life peaks at 20. The parties, the firsts, the flawless skin and frantic energy, that this was the summit, and everything after is just a long slide down. Hollywood sold it to you in movies where the 40-year-old guy is either the clueless dad or the villain. Social media hammered it home with endless feeds of 20-somethings on yachts, their lives a highlight reel of impossible perfection. Your own father might have spoken wistfully about his college days as the best years of his life, not realizing he was programming you with his own regrets. So you spent your 30s watching the calendar like a countdown, seeing every new line as a verdict, convinced the world was closing its doors. You measured yourself against ghosts, the version of you that never existed, the lives you saw curated on screens, the phantom of what you were supposed to have become. Each birthday felt like a report card with declining grades. You began to apologize for your age before anyone asked, making self-deprecating jokes about being too old for this, hoping to beat them to the punch. You watched younger men with a mixture of envy and resignation, believing they held something you'd lost forever. But here's what they left out. A man's life doesn't ignite at 20. It catches fire at 40, not because of age itself, but because of what age can bring if you're paying attention. If you've been doing the work, if you've stopped running from yourself long enough to let the dust settle and see what's actually left standing. The truth is, 20 is the age of raw ingredients, potential, energy, ambition, but 40 is when you learn to cook. You understand which flavors blend and which clash. You know that some things need to simmer, while others require a sear. You've burned enough meals to trust your instincts. At 20, you were pure potential, unfocused, reactive, desperate for an audience. You performed. You chased validation like a drug, mistaking every match on a dating app for proof of worth, every Instagram like for evidence of significance. You said yes when you meant no, bent yourself into shapes that could never hold, trying to fit into spaces that were never meant for you. Your emotions were weather systems that swept you up without warning. You were a satellite in constant orbit, never touching ground, burning fuel just to stay relevant. Now you carry something that can't be faked, gravitational pull. It's in the lines on your face that map where you've been, the failures that left scars, the silences that taught you more than any words. It's in the quiet you've earned through self-reckoning, through nights when you sat alone with the realization that you were the common denominator in all your problems. You walk into a room and shift its weight, not because you're trying, but because you're asterisk-rooted. Your presence has density now, the kind that comes from having been broken and learning you could put yourself back together without anyone's permission. This isn't about dominance. It's about being done with the performance. The difference is stark and unmistakable. A young man enters a space demanding to be seen, loud, flashy, proving. He's a billboard, broadcasting his worth in real time, terrified of being invisible. A man who has lived enters being seen, simply because his existence occupies space differently. He's not a billboard, he's a monument. He doesn't need to announce himself because his presence is the announcement. He's learned the hardest truth. People stay by choice, not coercion. You stop chasing. Stop convincing. Stop bleeding energy to hold what was never yours to keep. That stillness becomes a force field, repelling what doesn't belong and attracting what does. Habit 1. Emotional sovereignty. When you were younger, you used to explode with anger. You reacted to everything. You let your ego drive every decision, mistaking every slight for a battle that needed fighting. A sideways glance could ruin your day. A perceived disrespect could send you into a spiral of proving. You were a pinball, bouncing from one emotional trigger to the next, never realizing you were the one flipping the paddles. But now you understand, power lives in the pause. The space between stimulus and response is where your freedom lives. When someone disrespects you, you don't react, you respond asterisk. And sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. Not out of weakness, but out of the profound understanding that most battles are fought by people trying to prove they matter, and you've already settled that question for yourself. This mastery brings an authority to your presence that people can sense but can't name. They see it in your face, the way your expression doesn't flinch when others would. They feel it in your energy, the way you remain centered when chaos swirls around you. This isn't suppression, it's selection. You're no longer a slave to your neurochemistry. You've become its conductor. Habit 2. The counsel over the crowd asterisk. You've stopped trying to impress everyone. You've realized that not everyone deserves access to your life, your thoughts, your vulnerabilities. The desperation to be liked, to be included, to be validated by the masses, that was a hunger that could never be satisfied because it was hunger for something external that can only be found internally. Now you choose quality over quantity with the ruthlessness of someone who knows time is finite. You surround yourself with a small, genuine, mature circle of people who add value to your existence, people who challenge you, support you, and hold you accountable without trying to control you. You've learned that peace is more valuable than popularity, that a quiet dinner with one true friend outweighs 100 Instagram likes from strangers. This curation extends to information. You've stopped consuming the endless scroll of outrage and comparison. You've realized that your mind is a garden and you've been letting weeds choke the flowers. Now you're selective about what you let in. You read deeply instead of widely. You listen to understand instead of to respond. You protect your attention like the finite resource it is. The quieter your circle becomes, the greater your life grows. Habit 3. Legacy over limelight. At 20, you were a dreamer, intoxicated by possibility but paralyzed by choice. At 40, it's time to become a builder. Your goals now come before distractions. Your mission comes before entertainment. The game is no longer about looking rich or flexing on social media. The game is about legacy. It's about building something that lasts, something that matters beyond your own ego's need for applause. When a man works on his mission with unwavering focus, the world automatically gives him space. Not because he's aggressive, but because he's asterisk aligned. He's no longer pushing against reality, trying to force it into his image. He's working with reality, shaping it slowly, patiently, like water carving stone. This isn't just self-respect. It's self-trust. And when you reach this level, you don't just become attractive. You become unavoidable. You become the standard. The architecture of relationships. Let's dismantle another lie that your romantic life ends at 40. That's the fear that kept you up at night in your 30s. But attraction was never about age. It was always about energy about the quality of presence you bring to shared space. A 20-year-old boy talks to impress. He performs. He tries too hard. He fills every silence because silence feels like failure. A 40-year-old man speaks with understanding. He listens. He observes. He doesn't rush to fill every silence because he's comfortable in the quiet. Humans are drawn to those who carry their own weather. When you stop needing to impress, you create space for real connection. That self-containment, where you're not a slave to your emotions but fluent in them, builds the only kind of safety that matters: authenticity. This isn't about gender. It's about mature energy meeting mature energy. It's about two whole people choosing to walk together rather than two halves trying to complete each other. The body and the works. Your relationship with your body undergoes a quiet revolution too. At 20, you treated it like a machine, something to be pushed, optimized, and shown off. At 40, you treat it as a partner in your mission. You move it not to impress strangers, but because movement clears your mind. You sleep because you understand that rest is a strategic advantage. The six-pack abs might fade, but a deeper strength emerges. The power of recovery, of listening, of partnership with your physical self. You understand that your body is communicating with you constantly, through fatigue, through tension, through that knot in your stomach when you're living out of alignment. You learn to heed those signals, rather than override them with willpower and caffeine. The professional reckoning. In your career, this same transformation plays out. At 20, you were climbing a ladder someone else put against a wall. At 40, you've either reached a level of success that feels hollow, or you've realized the ladder was leaning against the wrong building. This is the great reckoning. You start asking different questions. What am I building? Who am I serving? What would I do even if no one clapped? You pivot from career to calling. The young manager leads through authority and fear. The mature leader leads through clarity of vision and trust. He knows that leadership isn't about being the smartest person in the room. It's about creating an environment where the smartest ideas can emerge. The quiet rebellion. Here's the final truth. You realize that timelines are arbitrary social constructs designed to keep you anxious. The world tells you to have it all figured out by 30, to be settled by 40. But you look around and see men who had it all at 30 and were miserable by 40. You see men who started their greatest work at 60. You see that the only timeline that matters is your own. This is the quiet rebellion of the 40-year-old man. He stops measuring his life against external milestones and starts measuring it against internal alignment. He opts out of the comparison game not dramatically, but quietly and firmly. He builds his life like a craftsman builds a table, slowly, carefully, with attention to the grain of the wood. It doesn't matter if it takes longer. What matters is that it lasts. Conclusion: the beginning. If you're approaching 40 or you're already past it, and you've been living under the weight of that old lie, it's time to set it down. You haven't missed your window. You are your window. The clarity, the presence, the gravitational pull you've been envying in others isn't something they were given. It's something they earned through the exact same process you're in now. Living, failing, learning, integrating. Your 20s were the sketch. Your 30s were the draft. Your 40s are where you finally publish the work that is unmistakably yours. This is the decade where you stop being a character in someone else's story and become the author of your own. You stop asking for permission and start granting it to yourself to live as you know you must. So stop looking in the mirror and seeing what you've lost. Start seeing what you've earned. Those lines aren't a map of decay. They're a topographical chart of a life fully lived. That gray isn't fading. It's wisdom becoming visible. The real life isn't behind you. It's right here, right now, waiting for you to claim it. Not with fanfare, but with the quiet, unshakable knowing that you are exactly where you're supposed to be, becoming exactly who you're meant to be. And that, more than any youth or any advantage, is true power.